We're back on the early edge and we transition to the NFL. It's our team betting profiles. I'm joined by Danny Brasco and Larry Hartstein. Gentlemen, it's time to cover the Cincinnati Bengals. They've got a win total of 9.5, minus 120 to the over, plus 100 to the under. I will note 9 wins last year, 9 wins the year prior. Larry, I'm going to start with you. Where do you lean on this one?
As much as I'd love to go over, given that Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are locked up long-term and the offense is probably going to lead the league in passing yards again, and I love Chase Brown and what he did as the go-to back down the stretch, it's just hard to go to 10 wins when you consider this was one of the worst defenses in football. They had almost no pass rush besides Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson is still not, that deal is not done. Their first-round pick, Shamar Stewart, who only had 4.5 sacks in college, but he's supposed to aid the pass rush. His deal is not done. So if the Bengals cannot get those two guys in, especially Trey Hendrickson, I don't care how good Al Golden is. And I know our colleague Tom Casale calls him the greatest defensive mind in the country. I don't care how good you are. You don't have the pieces to stop anybody.
Yeah, defense is really, really bad. And I agree. I don't think Al Golden is going to change enough for it to matter, at least not in year one. By the way, it's minus 120 to the under on that 9.5. Danny Brasco, are we leaning over with that sort of plus money, if you will, even money, or the under of a minus 120?
I actually am going to lean towards the over. I think they can eke out that 10th win, like in previous years. They got to that 9th. But this AFC North division, it's been vaunted in past years. And although the Steelers are adding up on defense, I think this offense, just with the firepower it has, barring injury, can put up video game-like numbers once again and surpass the Steelers and be clearly the second best team in this division. The Ravens are still the Ravens. But you look at their schedule that you just saw up on the graphic there, and I think there are some soft spots they can exploit. There are some tough points, of course, every team faces, but opening against the Browns and the Jaguars, then the Vikings. See, we talked about the J.J. McCarthy experiment. What if that's not working out early on? That could be a 3-0 start. You look at another pocket, they get Steelers, Jets, Bears, bye week Steelers, Patriots. That's a very winnable pocket. And of course, they end the season, Dolphins, Cardinals, Browns. So I feel like there are 10 wins on that board. They run into the Ravens, Bills, Ravens there. That could be an 0-3 stretch, but a couple upset wins. The Bengals find ways to win the games they're not supposed to and lose the ones they are. It's going to come down to that defense that Larry talked about. We'll see if Golden can make enough changes. Anarumo was lost out there last year. Couldn't press a button to save his life. And let's see if they can shape up back there in that secondary and win enough games for him.
Yeah, and I don't know that I want to give Anarumo all the blame there, though, Danny. I think from a personnel standpoint, that's why I don't know that Al Golden can revive this defense right away. It might be a personnel thing more than anything else. Of course, Danny, we'll find out, and I agree with that offensive part, like the video game type numbers in spite of a pretty porous offensive line. All right, well, let's talk about the AFC North in terms of division winners, because we've got the Bengals, third in line here, is it? Or no, plus 220 to win the division. I don't know. Second in line, obviously, with the Steelers and Browns trailing. I don't know that anybody's going to beat the Ravens here. Brasco, what say you?
Yeah, the Ravens reign supreme here. They have all the same pieces as last season. That vaunted rushing attack with Jackson and Henry is just unstoppable. The Bengals certainly aren't going to be the team to stop them. So I think the odds are appropriate. I don't think I'm going to take the bet at plus 220, but I do believe they are the second best team in this division. Ravens are just too strong.
Larry, your thoughts here. Ravens are my pick to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl, so I'm certainly not taking this plus 220.
Yeah, same here. I would need at least 3-1. If you look at that Bengals schedule, there's some very tough road games on there. And I think the Steelers have improved as much as I, don't enjoy the Aaron Rodgers saga. But the additions they made going all in this year, I think those are 2 additional very difficult road games in addition to the 4 other tough road games on their schedule. So I don't think there's enough value on the Bengals to take a shot.
Let's talk about once the Bengals make the playoffs, if they make the playoffs, because I think it's a little interesting that the Bengals are 4th in line in the AFC from an odds perspective, behind, of course, the Ravens, who we just talked about, the Bills and the Chiefs. All that makes sense. Then a pretty big drop off with the Bengals coming next, the Chargers, I assume, teams like the Texans and the Broncos, pretty close behind there here at BetMGM. Larry, I'm going to start with you. What are you thinking with this 10-1 number on the Bengals?
They are a high variance team. This is a team, when you have an offense like that in today's NFL, you can obviously beat anyone 38-31. I saw something interesting that They actually only trailed for 31% of the snaps last season, which was the third lowest, yet they still managed to lose 8 times because they couldn't get a pass rush and couldn't stop anyone down the stretch. So if you flip a couple of those, you get Trey Hendrickson in, you get Shamar Stewart in. I like the addition of Slayton from the Packers in the middle of that D line, but a lot of stuff has to come together. I would need more than plus 1,000.
Yeah, Danny, to your point on the over with the win total, I think that's where you were. They were 4-7, I believe, in one-score games. I mean, a lot of NFL games are one-score games when it comes down to it, but a lot of those games could have gone the other way. So your thoughts on them, if they get into the playoffs doing some damage at plus 1,000 to represent the AFC?
Yeah, if I like them to win 10 games, I do think they could get into the playoffs, certainly. I don't think I'll take this at 10-1. The reason they're fourth in line, see, is because they got a guy named Joe Burrow back there. He can beat any Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson on any given Sunday. He's that good. And, going for a potentially 5,000-yard passing season again, Jamar Chase putting up those ridiculous numbers, they can beat anyone. But ultimately, you guys keep talking about it. It comes down to the defense. Cam Taylor-Britt, Geno Stone, those guys kind of shaped up at the end of the season last year, and they made a little push, showed some life, but yeah, we're really going to see if the veterans like Logan Wilson and those guys can do enough to keep them in games that they can just outscore their opponents in.
Danny, you mentioned Joe Burrow, and this is practically a rhetorical question because you're right. He almost threw for 5,000 yards last season. I think it was 43 touchdown passes. I mean, outside of injury, Danny, there's no way Joe Burrow's having a poor season given the makeup of this team and what they're going to have to do on offense.
Yeah, that's it. Outside of injury, they're putting up video game numbers again. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. Like you said, they've got T. Higgins back. They've secured Jamar Chase up. As long as they're not just taking the day off because they got their money and they got their bag, then we should be good for crazy production. Really, that's all we're betting against here, I think, is injury. Because the performance you're getting. If you get the typical Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, barring injury, you're going to put up these numbers no problem. So their props are pretty attractive. I don't love laying minus 110 on a future. Usually want longer plus money. But I think some of those numbers that are set at that pick'em price are pretty fair and pretty attractive as long as these guys stay healthy.
4 years, 161 million and 115 million. I believe those are the numbers on Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. All right, we're going to get to some props in a second that kind of speak to what you're talking about. But Larry, I assume you're going to, I hate to say it, but I assume you're going to pair it what Brasco said. I don't see a scenario outside of injury where Burrow doesn't light it up again.
Yeah, and Burrow just said that his wrist was not fully healthy last year, and even now it's still not fully healthy, but he's getting there. And look at what he did last year with those numbers. We'll see if they can improve the interior of the offensive line, which was a big problem last year, but he's going to put up absolutely sick numbers. I just don't think the MVP odds for him, if we want to get into awards a little bit, are really fair or are really valuable because he's not going to be on a team that gets the number 1 or number 2 seed, in my opinion, and the MVP almost always goes to a guy on the top 2 seeds.
Which is why, of course, my Commanders, Jaden Daniels, he's basically a shoo-in. They may as well fit him for that right now at plus 850. I'm kidding, of course, but I see your point, Larry, and we're going to get to props now because you mentioned Joe Burrow for MVP. I believe that's plus 650 over at BetMGM. But Larry, talk to me about your favorite player prop for the Bengals.
Yeah, Chase Brown was 200-1, now down to 100-1 to win Offensive Player of the Year, which usually goes to a non-quarterback. And he's in a great situation because when Zach Moss went down in the middle of last season, he averaged 23.5 touches down the stretch, 120 yards per game. I mean, you are like the main cog in the backfield for an electric offense where they can't really pay attention to you because of Chase and Higgins and all of the weapons. And yes, they brought in Samaje Perine. Yes, Zach Moss might make the team, but that is not a lot of competition. So this is just a golden opportunity for Chase Brown, and people are already on it as you've seen him fall from 200-1, now 100-1. But I think he's going to have a monster year as pretty much the lone back.
Larry, I think that's your money, cutting the odds in half from 200 to 100. Can I just say, Danny, before you give out your prop, which I love, by the way, Jamar Chase, Offensive Player of the Year at plus 950. I gave it out on the Early Edge Morning Show on the SportsLine YouTube channel. I absolutely love it. Guy was an absolute monster last year with 1,700 receiving yards. He led the league in that, in yards after catch, in touchdowns, in targets, and receptions. I don't see why he's not going to be a monster again this year. But, Danny, it's the other side of that battery that you like from the prop department.
And both of your plays perfectly complement mine because I love Larry's take on Chase Brown, who I think is a great pass catching running back, right? He really supports their short pass game, and that can be an extension of the run game. If that offensive line isn't getting it going, they just dump it off to Chase Brown, and that helps rack up more pass yards for Burrow, who's already just dishing out to a guy in Jamar Chase, who, like you said, great case on the Early Edge morning show for him to win Offensive Player of the Year, 1,700 passing yards. He had 4,900 last year, passer rater of 108 and 43 touchdowns. Again, barring injury, I see the same type of numbers. So I think he easily surpasses this 4,150 total of passing yards. And like I said, I don't mind laying a pick 'em here because this is Joe Burrow territory all day long.
Yeah, it's crazy to say, but it seems low at 4,150.
Right.
Danny Brasco, Larry Hartstein, thank you very much. That's the team betting profile for the Cincinnati Bengals.